Good morning students, welcome to Triveni Memorial Senior Secondary School online classes. Students, today we are going to study one of our another chapter from class 7 in history, that is our chapter number 4, the Mughal Empire. Students, you know this thing very well that India was a very big reason to get controlled or to get captured. But anyhow, Mughal emperor managed to capture large area or large territory of India. So in this chapter, we are going to study about Mughal Empire. Thereafter, students, one more important thing is there, and that is related to the architect style. Architect style means the style of various buildings that were formed during the Mughal emperor time period. Mostly what we used to observe that now today also we observe some of the architect style or buildings, say Red Fort. You know, Red Fort is one of the important building for us because almost all the important decisions or declarations used to take place from the Red Fort only. So that Red Fort was also built during the time period of Mughal Emperor or Mughal Empire. You can see the photo of Red Fort here also. And not only the Red Fort but some other buildings, some other architect styles were also developed during Mughal Empire. Thereafter, students, our next topic is who were the Mughals. If what we can say that Mughals were the descendants. You can say descendants, they basically belongs to two sides, from their mother side or from their father side. That is what is mentioned here. That Mughal were descendants from their mother sides. They were descendants of Genghis Khan, and from their father side, they were descendants of Timurid dynasty. From their father sides, they captured the regions of Iran, Turkey, etc. And from their mother side, they captured the area of Central Asia or the region of China. But the thing is that Mughal wants themselves to be called from the name of their father's side. That is, they are proud of their Timurid, you can say dynasty or their Timurid descendant. They don't want to be called from their mother's side. And there is one big reason behind that. Now the question is, what is that reason why they don't want to get called from their mother's side name? Because their mother's side is linked up with the massacre or the murder of innumerable people, and they do not want themselves to be joined with that particular scenario. They just want to have their clean image. That is why they choose their father's identity or their father's side, and they were proud to be of their Timurid dynasty, that is of their father's side. That is Mughal military campaigns. Yes, of course, huge military groups were required. As I already told you, Mughals were interested in capturing the large territory of India. So definitely they need huge military groups. So what we said here, that earlier in the starting if we talk about the various rulers or various emperor of Mughals, then the first one is Babur. Babur was succeeded to the throne, that is he became the king in 1494, and when he just got on the throne he was just 12 years old. We are talking about who? We are talking about one of the Mughal emperor named Babur. He was just 12 years old when he was offered the throne. Thereafter what happens, students? Only Babur or these particular Mughal group is not there. Other Mughal competitors were also there, who were engaged with them, who were their competitors, who were also interested in capturing the large part of the territory, large part of the India. And one of their major competitors were the Uzbeks. Uzbeks were their major competitors, and they were also interested in capturing the large part of Panipat, Delhi, Agra, and all the other major commercial centers of that time. Now, what is said here, one particular chart will be displayed to you, which is shown on the next page. You can clearly see here. This chart gives you information regarding the various Mughal emperors who ruled Delhi, who ruled India at different particular time periods. So first one is your Babur, that I already told you that he was the first Mughal emperor. He ruled from the time period of 1526 to 1530. And during this time period, he was defeated by different rulers. Firstly, or he defeated different rulers also. Firstly, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi, where at Panipat. Then he defeated Rana Sanga and his alliance, and in 1528 he defeated the Rajputs. So this is about the various Mughal emperors or rulers who ruled over India at various time periods. Then is your Humayun. His time period is also mentioned there, that is he ruled from 1530 to 1540, and thereafter he again ruled from 1555 to 1558. And what were the various provinces that were under his control, that is clearly mentioned here, you can see. Thereafter, regarding Akbar, Akbar was also one of the very prominent leader who belong, or prominent emperor you can say, who belongs to Mughal emperor or who belongs to Mughal dynasty. And not only famous architect style took under Akbar, but he also used to give reference to the religious scholars also. Religious teachings, he believed in spreading the unique concept of universal peace across the world or across India, from different part of the subcontinents. That is your Jahangir. Different military campaigns take place under Jahangir also, and he ruled from the time period of 1605 to 1627. That is your Shah Jahan. All of us know that why Shah Jahan is famous, or for what he is famous. He is famous for building one of the very famous monuments, that is your Taj Mahal. And he ruled from the time period of 1627 to 1658. Thereafter, last Mughal emperor, he was none other than Aurangzeb, and he ruled for a small period of time, and that is 1658 to 1707. So these were the different Mughal emperors or different Mughal rulers under the Mughal dynasty. Thereafter, students, Mughal traditions of succession. See, students, in earlier times, generally what used to happen, the eldest son was provided or was given the throne of the king. But Mughals do not follow this tradition of succession. Succession, what do you mean by succession? Succession means the next generation. The elder son of every next generation would be the king or would be the handling the throne. But in Mughal case, they do not follow the tradition of succession. They do not believe in this concept of primogeniture. What does that mean? As I already told you, primogeniture. That means the elder son would not be given the throne, would not be given the permission to rule. They believed that the person who is capable enough and all the sons of the king will be distributed, will be given with the equal powers. Powers will be distributed equally among all the sons of the king. Then the next is Mughal relation with other rulers. Yes, Mughals have clearly recognized this thing, that if they want to capture the large part of the Indian territory, they need to maintain good relationship with the other kings or with the other kingdoms also. And so several examples are also given here. What happened? Some rulers were there voluntarily. Voluntarily means from themselves, from their wish. They just come forward to join the Mughal authority, to join the Mughal rulers, because they understand this thing that Mughal had already expanded their territory alone. On the other hand, Some examples are given here where some dynasty, after recognizing this thing that Mughals were very powerful, they offered their daughters to Mughal people to get married to Mughal people. And one of the example is regarding Rajput. Many of the Rajput Gharanas or Rajput family offered their daughters for marriage to Mughal people so that they can establish good relationship with the Mughals and can live peacefully. Thereafter, one example is given here regarding Sishodhya Rajput of Mewar. At a particular time, he refused to accept the Mughal authority for a long time period. But Mughal accepted this thing and they do not force Sishodhya Rajput to be their descendant or to work under them. Rather, they offered their watan. What do you mean by watan? Watan means their land. They offered Sishodhya Rajput watan land back to them. So this is how they try to maintain good relationship with other rulers or with other kingdoms also, especially with the Rajputs or other large rulers. Then is Mansabdars and Jagirdars. Now what are these? As I already told you, as Mughal were interested in increasing, in expanding their part of territories or their territories at large level, they need to recruit. What do you mean by recruit? They need to provide jobs to different people who belongs to different background in army or at different posts also. So they recruited, they provided jobs to Muslims, to Afghans, to Hindus, to Rajputs, to Marathas, people from different backgrounds. And all those people who were joining the Mughal services, who were ready to recruit, who were ready to serve these Mughals, were called as Mansabdars. I hope who were Mansabdars, it is clear to you. All the people who were ready to serve Mughals were called as Mansabdars, who joined the Mughal empire. Thereafter, we need to know that what does the term Mansabdar means. But we can say, I already told you, it refers to an individual who holds a particular mansab and enjoys a particular rank. Mansabdar was a particular rank holder, and this rank was given by rank or this position was given by Mughal emperor to these peoples. And in order of their work, in order of their rank, they were given with the salaries. Now, the person who is at the highest rank would be definitely given with the higher amount of salary because he was doing more duties, performing more jobs for the Mughals. On the other hand, the Mansabdar or the person who is at the low rank would be given less amount of salaries. Now the question is, the amount of salary that was provided to these Mansabdar would be given in the form of numerical value, currency at that time, mints or coins. And this prize or reward or this particular amount which is dedicated or given to these Mansabdar is given in the form of numerical value, which is called as Jat. And I already told you, the Mansabdar which is at higher level will be paid with the highest salary, and the Mansabdar will be at the lower level will be paid with the less salary. Now these Mansabdar used to perform various jobs for Mughal people. They bought cavalrymen. Now who were cavalrymen? The person during the fight time who used to ride on the horses and is handling the horse during the fight is the cavalryman Savar, who were fighting on foot. And horses, they arranges money and arranges different sources for Mughal people. And the salaries that they were paid, those salaries were paid in the form of jagirs. Salaries were paid to these Mansabdar in the form of jagirs. And unlike muktis, who were muktis, or we will study about muktis in this chapter later on. Clear discussion is there regarding them. And they have to collect the taxes from people. I'm talking about the duty of Mansabdars and all. They were responsible for collecting revenue or taxes from different people at different interval of time and submitting it to the Mughal emperor. In against that or in order of that, they will be awarded with the salaries. Thereafter, students, our next topic is Zabt and Zamindars. Now, what is that? First of all, we need to understand that as the territory was very large, what was the main source of income with the Mughal Empire? The main source of income with the Mughal Empire was the taxes. Mughal Empire used to collect taxes from the people, especially on the production of crops from the peasants. Now, the Mughal Empire were not collecting these taxes on crops directly from the, you can say, peasants or farmers. Rather, in between they hired an intermediary. What do you mean by intermediary? Intermediary means a link between the Mughal Emperor and the farmers and the peasants. And these intermediaries or these means were none other than the zamindars. Zamindars or local chiefmen. These zamindars collect tax from the farmers or from the peasants, and after collecting these zamindars used to deposit this tax with the Mughal Emperor. So they played, zamindar played an important role of intermediary or link between the Mughal Emperor and the chiefmen or farmers or peasants. And yes, it's not like that same amount of tax will need to be paid by all the peasants or farmers. No. These zamindar did proper survey of the crop yields, and according to the crop yields, each farmer or each particular peasant was declared that what amount of tax they need to submit with the zamindar, that the zamindar was going to submit it with the Mughal Emperor. So different tax amount was there according to the different crop yields. The peasant who is having large amount of land is most definitely having maximum crop yield, so he will deposit more of the tax. And the zamindar who will be having less land will be paying less amount of tax. And that is how they maintained their revenue system. Now this complete revenue system was called or was given a particular term, and that was called as ZAB. That is ZABT, ZAB. So this is how we studied that how Mughal Emperor arranges revenue sources for themselves and were successful in doing a good administration of the whole region, of the whole territory. Now what happened? The small caste people also tried to criticize the zamindars or the high Mughal Emperor. Why did they criticize them? Because they were not having sufficient money or enough money with them so that they can go against their rules, or they were not having sufficient amount of money with them so that they can pay in the form of taxes to the Mughal Emperor, and that is why they were rebelling, they were going against Mughal Emperor. That is Akbar's policies. Now regarding Akbar policy, there is one particular famous book, and the name of the book is Abul Fazl. In this book, various volumes are there. Volume 1, volume 2, various volumes of this book are there. And these books clearly focused or discussed regarding the various policies that were opted by Emperor Akbar, one of the emperor of under Mughal Empire. And one of the volume under Abul Fazl is Akbarnama, one of the very famous volume under this book. And in this book he gave various examples regarding Akbar. But he said that the whole empire under Akbar was divided into small provinces. Provinces mean small areas, you can say. And these small provinces were called as subas. Like particular area is there, different small pieces, the whole territory was divided under Akbar. And these small provinces were called as subas. And each suba was governed by a particular person, is having a particular person who is, you can say, controlling each suba. And that particular person was called as subedar, who managed all the affairs of that suba. Political affairs, political affairs, arranging money for that suba, supervising that, maintaining things in that suba. So subedar was responsible for all such things that need to be performed in that suba. Thereafter, if we talk, they all under, as I already told this to you, that Akbar brings the concept of religious scholars. he believed in the concept of universal peace. He said that universal peace should be there, people should not fight with each other, and all should be live with peace and harmony together. So what they said, under Akbar, different military commanders were also there who appoints or who choose different posts in the militaries, and these were called as Fojdars or Kotwals. Kotwals basically means your general police persons. Police persons and military commanders, Fojdars, were also there under Mughal emperor. Thereafter, what they said, as I already told you, Akbar needs to have large amount of revenue with under him because he was capturing a very big territory. So that is why what they used to collect, or Akbar also used to collect taxes from the people, and Akbar was having a cordial relationship, a good relationship with different noble family members who were getting their power often or weakened with respect to the time. So what happened? One of the things is mentioned here, that is regarding Fatehpur Sikri. Fatehpur Sikri was basically at a particular time, he was the capital of Akbar's presidency. He used to take all the important decisions regarding his empire at Fatehpur Sikri. In fact, Akbar approaches various religious scholars, like from different religions, like he offered Jesus priest, he offered Brahmins, and he talked to different religious scholars so that they can provide different information to him regarding different religion. And then finally he can come to the conclusion that although people have different faiths, although all the people who belong to different religions have different faith, but all believe in one concept, and that is the concept of universal peace. All needs to live with peace and harmony. He emphasized on the rituals and dogma and often very Bibles. Now we need to understand what rituals means, tradition, culture. So now we need to understand what are dogma. Dogma is basically a statement which states an authoritative relationship, expectation that people need to follow without questioning. That means if some policy was there that was given by Akbar, then none of the member of the Akbar empire can go against that policy. They need to adopt that without any question. So that is the way. Now that there is bigot, what is bigot? When an individual is intolerant of another person's religion, that is your bigot. Akbar do not focus on this concept of bigot. He said that if a particular person, suppose if I am Hindu and I believe in Hindu religion, that doesn't mean that I am going to disrespect other religion like Christianity, Muslim, or etc. All people have the right to worship their own religion. And that is the only reason, in order to fulfill the concept of universal peace, he used to have fun with Brahmins at Ibadat Khana, or with priest, or with the Jesus priest, and with a different personality. So this is what I mentioned here. So he believed in the system of ethics, honesty, justice, and he tried that these needed to prevail in his empire, throughout the empire, or all over his kingdom. So the principle of the governance, his principle of governance, what does that mean? His administrative policy, political policies, all these policies. Whose policies? Akbar policies. They were followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan as well. The next is the Mughal Empire in the 17th century and after. This I already told you. Till 17th century, Mughal Empire had expanded its territory over a large area in India. The Mughal Empire were having a great economic and commercial prosperity with them, and they were considered as one of the stronger or strongest emperor in the kingdom, and that is why they were having different mansabdars who were paid with the salaries or with the affords, and a proper system of management of administrative system was there under Mughal Emperor, and they were under Mughal Emperor. They were the one who were having the wealthiest peasantry system and the wealthiest merchants. Merchants means traders who used to work under Mughal emperors. And regarding the elite class people, elite means high class people, middle class people, I already told you, they were under them, and they were having many important center, powerful center of power under them. And they used to have these powerful center or provinces at different states, like in Hyderabad, in Awadh, in Delhi, etc. So these were the center of the trade or the places where they can take important decisions. So this is how, students, what we have concluded in this chapter, that Mughal Emperor or Mughal Empire was one of the empire which was successful in capturing the large territory of India. Now that's it about our chapter, students. Now we will discuss about the question answer of the chapter, students. So let's start, student. Our first question is regarding match the following. You can see here I already told you what does the word Mansab stands for. It means the rank. Mongol, I already told you they were one of the biggest competitor of Mughal Emperor, and that was Uzbek. That is Shishodia Rajput, they belongs to Mewar, who denied to accept the authority, the power of Mughals at one time. That is Rathore Rajput, they were Marwar. That is your Noor Jahan. She was the queen of Jahangir. That is your Subedar. I already told you Subedar was governor of a particular Suba. That is your fill in the blanks. You can see here. First one is the capital of Mirza Hakim. Who was Mirza Hakim? Mirza Hakim was considered as the right hand or Akbar's half brother. And who was he? Where was it? It was in Kabul. That is, the 5 Deccan sultanates were Berar, Khandesh, Ahmednagar, and your Bijapur and Golconda. The next is, if Zar determine a Mansabdar rank and salary, Savar indicate his number of cavalrymen. I already told you, Savar were the people who were deciding on the foot and were ready to fight. The next is, Abul Fazl, Akbar's friend and counselor, helped him frame the idea of Suluk, that is your Sul-e-Kul, in which he focused on the concept of universal peace. That is, moving ahead, our question answer. What were the central provinces under the control of Mughals? Various provinces were there that were under the control of Mughals at that time period, and those were Lahore, Panipat, Delhi, and thereafter, what were the relationship between the Mansabdar and the Jagir? That I already told you. Person who is enjoying the highest rank or is big Mansabdar will be given with the highest amount of Jagir, higher amount of salary. Then is, what was the role of Zamindar in Mughal administration? I already told you. Zamindar used to act as an intermediary, act as a link between whom? Between the peasants and the Mughal emperor. Thereafter, and he is responsible for collecting the revenue and tax and then submitting it to the Mughal emperor authorities. How were the debates with religious scholars important in the formation of Akbar ideas of governance? Yes, why that was important, I already told you. He discussed with Jesus people, he just discussed with Brahmins, he discussed with priests, he discussed with Muslim people, also religious scholars, and finally he came to that conclusion that all the religion focus on one idea, and that is universal peace. The next question is, why did the Mughal emphasis on their Timurid dynasty and not on Mongol descent? Because Mughal descent or their mother side dynasty was related with innumerable massacre, that is of many people, that is with the death of many people, and they do not want to link their name with such dynasty. The next is, how important was the income from land revenue to the stability of the Mughal Empire? That's very easy. If you want to maintain the administrative system, if you want to do the proper welfare, if you want to run your administrative properly, then you have no other option left with you, then is to have had some kind of revenue. The next is, why was it important for the Mughals to recruit Mansabdar from diverse background and not just from Quranis and Iranis? This already I told you. Because Mughals were captured, they were engaged in expanding their territories all over the India. So if they will be providing duties to a particular person, that is a possibility that a different reason they might not understand what these people were saying. That is why according to different places they recruit different person who can easily handle the situation, who can easily understand the language of the person, and the work can go smoothly. The next is, like the Mughal Empire, India today is also made up of many social and cultural units. Thus, this poses a challenge to national integrity. There are various challenges in the way of national integrity, but from them or accept all those hurdles, India was still living with the concept of peace and harmony. So students, that's it about the chapter. I hope you understand the concept of the chapter very well. So thank you, sir.